So let's go ahead and begin sculpting our character. Gonna start out with a UV sphere. Zooming in. Gonna go to sculpt mode. Gonna go to my settings here for my sculpting brush. Turn on the symmetry in the X direction. That way, whatever we're doing on one side, does it on the other. And for the voxel size for the remesh, let's set it to 0.08 and click remesh. Or Control R to remesh that. And the smooth brush here, we should set it to a low value, about 0.2 when we're just starting out. So when we are smoothing the mesh, it's not melting down the clay. And use the grab brush to just bring down the shape of the character. So right now I'm looking at the side view, and you have to use the grab brush to just move it down so you have this chin of the character. Just starting out with a very basic shape of the head. Once again, this is the side view of the character. And then let's go to view. So right here, we have to change our focal length. If you go to the view tab there, we can't leave it at 50 millimeters. Let's set it to 100 millimeters. So setting this to 100 millimeters is important. That way we don't get any distortion on our character, especially when it's time for us to find a really nice view. You want a nice view that will give you a realistic render. And using my scrape brush, just gonna go ahead and scrape the side of the head here. Right there. Just scrape that. This is just a quick way for me to just get the basic shape down. Alright, so using the scrape brush, we have to create some planar shape. So planar shape right here. And also right here, another planar shape. So kind of like think of more like a helmet type when you are doing this. And also this, another surface here. So this will be just a really quick way to get the basic shape of the head down that will allow us to easily create our skull shape here. But yeah, I start out with a very basic planar head. So from the top view, you should see something like this, where you got this planar shape and then you got this angle going. I like to do this because from my experience, it just prevents me from making a really flat face. Just by getting a basic shape like this down right away will keep your head from looking too flat on the front part right on the get-go. And we could go ahead and bring down our voxel size to 0.05 and remesh that. And then using our clay brush here, just push in the clay. Just create the orbital region of the eye, the orbit area. This is where the eyeball is going to go into. And we could create like the nasal opening here. Just thinking about the skull as we do this. So just pushing out the clay, pushing in the clay. So yeah, just using the clay brush here to lay down a clay on top. So we got this bony shape here. And then push in the clay. Just hold control and push in the clay. Using the clay strips brush to get a little depth on the orbital region and the nasal opening there. And also you could see that I have added a little bit of the brow ridge already going on here. And then around the mouth area, just adding some volume here. Using the clay strip brush. And then creating the side of the jaw. So as you can see there, I already have this shape zygomatic bone, the cheekbone. Taking that shape. And we got this jaw, side of the jaw. Once again, just thinking of the skull as I am creating this. So I am just using the clay strip brush right at the beginning to add those shapes here. And then using my grab brush to just kind of shape this out to look a little bit more like the skull shape. And then just adding a little bit more clay here. So as you can see, there's the little nice volume going on here. Really nice volume. And right here, just adding the frontal bone. And then the temporal line. Looking from the side view, just gonna push the head in because it's a little too big. And then just using the clay strip brush to push this area. Push that in. And looking from the top, we should have a little bit of roundness going. And this is looking a little squarish, so from the top, just nudging this to round it out a little bit. And then just gonna push that back. So what I'm thinking about right now is thinking of an egg shape as I'm doing this here. So we got this nice egg shape, so it's a little wider around this area, and then it gets a little bit tapered here when I'm thinking about the skull. And creating that nasal bone popping out. And then pushing in the clay with the clay strip brush, holding control and pushing that in. And then just remesh it. Yeah, when you create a lot of depth on the clay, and you see the clay start to really stretch out, this is when you need to start to remesh it. Okay, when you really do a lot of extrusion on the clay, whether you pull it out the clay or you push in the clay like a really huge depth, then you gotta remesh it to redistribute the polygons on the surface. So right here, just going to every part of the skull here and just shape it out. And then just bringing down the voxel size again and remesh it. The lower the value is for the voxel size, the more polygons you will have and the more details you're gonna have. And as you can see there, using the clay strip brush, I added a little bulge where the eyeball is gonna be. Right now, it's just gonna be a little placeholder there. We are going to add an actual eyeballs here later, but it's good to have something to work with. And then just remesh it. Once again, if you bulge something that much, you need to add some more voxel size by bringing down the value and remesh it. So yeah, right now you should have a lower value because you should have protruded this out. So this is just going to act as an eyeball right now. All right, that way we know exactly where we're gonna have our eyelid. All right, so we know we have our orbital area here, orbital region for our skull, and then this is where our eyeball is going to be later on. But it's good to have a little something there so that we have a little understanding of where we're going to place the eyelids. As you can see right now, using the clay strip brush, thinking about where the upper eyelids is going to be. So really the way this works is you have your orbital opening here. And then you're going to have your eyeball right about in here, okay? And then you're going to have your eyelids right here. This is going to be your eyelids connecting right there and then connecting right there. And then that's the upper eyelids. And then you're going to have your lower eyelids connecting here and then here. And the lower eyelids is going to kind of wrap around the eyeball area here. And then you might have a little bit eye bag if the person is old. But yeah, this is right now what I'm thinking about as I'm creating the eye area. You don't have to really think about the details right now. It's just all just basic shapes, all right? And then make sure that you are looking in the top view and the bottom view of the mesh. That way you know that the eye is not going to be really flat. Yeah, so you could see I like to look from the top view here. That way we could see that we have this round shape going. Often I see students when they are sculpting, they don't really look at the top or the bottom view of the character. So their eyes just end up looking like kind of like flat like this from the top, when really it should be, you should have your eyeball there. And since you have an eyeball there and it's round, you should have the eyelids kind of wrapped around it, and you should have that shape when you're looking at the top view or bottom view. You see right there, I'm always looking at the top and bottom. And we need to push the inner corner part of the eyes in, get a little depth in there. And then just gonna slowly adding the muscles, the fat around the space and the orbital region. So we know that we have, this is the orbital area, as you should probably know, as I always talking about it, orbital region. And what really fills up the spacing here, because we know we have our eyeball there, right? And what fills up the spacing is a combination of some fatty tissue, and then on top of that fatty tissue, we're gonna have some muscles on top of that fills up that space, all right? And that is basically what I'm sculpting right now. Just filling that area out, that space. And using the draw brush, you just carve in the clay. Thinking about, right now I'm just thinking about how the eyes look like when it's closed. But later on we're gonna open it up. And just make sure that when you look at the inner part of the eye here, you see the inner part, make sure that you just kind of push that in. Often I see students, the inner part is kind of pushed out a little too much. So this part here, this part of the eye should have a little depth. So just use a grab brush, just kind of push that in. The main mistake the students make is they just kind of ignore that part. And then masking this area out. Control I to invert it. And so now we're going to use our grab brush to pull that out. And we're just pulling out a clay here that we could work with for the nose. And then just use the inflate brush to bulge that. So as you can see how important it was really for us to create the basic shape of the skull. So, you know, at the beginning we have like just the nasal opening, we have a hole there, and then, you know, we also have like the orbital region and we have like a hole there. And then understanding where that is, we kind of know already how we're going to be protruding the nose area, where we're going to put the eyeballs, and then the fatty tissue on the area for the eye and the muscles. So just laying down the foundation of the skull and understanding the skull, you're able to create a quick, realistic shape that is much more accurate as it pertains to nature. And yeah, using the grab brush, you just kind of shape this out. Right now, we're not really thinking too much of the orc, because the orc is a monster. But right now, all we're thinking about is getting the anatomy down. We're not really exaggerating on the features right now, but we will later. Right now, we're just doing more like a basic male character, basic male face. That's it. trying to get the anatomy down, not thinking so much about exaggerating at the beginning. And then using the clay strip brush to just kind of add a little bit indication where the nasal opening will be. And you can see here, I also added, I've added the nasal labial fold area here. So this is a very important part of the face. And then right here, I'm starting to create a little bit of the lip area. And then using the grab brush, just kind of pull that out, the eye, and then push this in. And pull that out a little bit. Push that back. Yeah, sometimes you just gotta look in other views to make sure everything is still good. You might spend a little too much time on the front face and then you might forget the side view, so always go back and forth between that. And then using the draw brush to just create that line right there. So yeah, using that brush right there to carve in the clay for the lip area. And then using the clay strip brush, pushing in the clay. So yeah, after you use the draw sharp to just carve in the clay here, you could use the clay strip brush here to just kind of shape out the lips. Using the clay strip brush to just kind of push this area in. So we got a little bit of planar shape here. Yeah, pushing that in. And then on to the lower lips here. Pushing this in for the philtrum area. So for the top part, we got this little nice dip. Okay. And then we got this philtrum shape. Right. And from the top, you could see that there's already a little bit of planar shape here going. So it has to be a little round already, just a little bit around. And make sure you look in all views. You don't want your lips to look flat. And then pushing this clay in. So adding this shape right here. So using the clay strip, just push this in. So we got a little bit of shape going on over here. And bulge that out with the clay strip brush. This time you're gonna have a little bit difficulty adding more shape here once you really carve this part of the lips in. So now will be a good time to remesh it. Maybe if you need to add a little bit more geometry here, so maybe bring it down a little bit, the voxel size, if you need to. That way you can have a little bit more polygons to work with. But remember, you are still working on the basic form, so you should not have too many polygons where you cannot smooth the clay anymore. So don't go too low with the voxel size. You want just enough so that you're able to add a little bit of the shape, but don't think about the details. Okay, so just enough to create those forms, but at the same time, you should still be able to smooth out the clay. If you cannot smooth out the clay, that's because your voxel size is way too low, or your intensity for your smooth brush is also low. Right here, I'm just masking the top lip area. So masking the top lip, that way I could just focus on working on the lower lips, using the scrape brush to just kind of flatten that area out. Yes, you can see I have used the scrape brush to just kind of flatten this lip area. So I have more like something like this, right? And then I'm gonna use my grab brush here to just kind of protrude this out so we have more of a shape like this from the side view. And then look in the top view. Yeah, looking at the top, you should have a round round lips going. So you should not have like flat lips like this from the top view, and you see that's a little too flat. Make sure you use a grab brush and round that out. So when you're looking from the top or the bottom view of the lips, you should think of more like a canned off tuna. So you got the cylindrical shape there, and then the lips is gonna go like kind of wrap around there. And then just moving that down. Then adding a little bit of node there. And push this lips in. Using the draw sharp, you're just gonna sharpen the border. So yeah, you could use the draw sharp and then hold control as you sculpt around this area, and you will see as you hold control and you use the draw sharp, you will see it protrude. All right, so if you use the draw sharp and you just sculpt it without holding control, you're carving in the clay. But if you hold control, you're gonna protrude the upper border of the lips there. Another thing that's very important is this part of the lips. Okay, so you should have this kind of shape right there, which is the node. Everybody has this. All right, so not only should you have this nasolabial fold there, right, this nasolabial fold, which is like this right here, but you should also have this shape right here going on the mouth area. Then back onto the object mode. I am gonna rotate this because it looks like it's tilted back a little bit, so just rotate it down. There you go. So yeah, at the beginning it just kind of looked like he's kind of looking up like this. So using the rotate tool, just kind of rotate so it's looking more straight at you. All right. Okay, back onto the sculpt mode. So we really have the bony landmarks on the face there because we have a pretty nice shape there already. We have this nice bony landmark in the skull. We got this bony landmark for the frontal bone. And now we got this shape right here for the brow ridge area. All right. And then we have the cheekbone going. And then we have this orbital area. And then we got this shape right here for the lips, the nasolabial fold. All right, so it's really coming along right now. Just for a short time, we should have already something like that going. Then masking the mouth right here. Masking this jaw and the mouth. And yeah, the lower part, just masking everything on the lower face here. And then masking that with a lasso. Masking all that. And then also right here. And yeah, we're gonna work on using our scale right here. Make sure you turn off mirror and set pivot to mask border. And then scale that down. Okay, this is actually the time that we are going to kind of exaggerate on things. So after you have the basic structure of the face where you have the male anatomy, the average male anatomy, and you're happy with it, now is the time to exaggerate and look at pictures of your orc. And this is when you're going to bulge the lower part and then maybe make this part a little smaller. So yeah, I like to start out with just doing the average face, average male face. And after doing that, If I am doing monsters or a strange creature that is human-like, after I tackle the basic anatomy forms, then is the time that I exaggerate the facial features, as you see me do here. So you can see, just scaling that. So making the upper head smaller, because that's what we have for the orc. And then moving this a little bit forward. Right, and yeah, as you could see, just by doing that, we have a little bit more of a bulky face here, which is what I'm really going for the orc. He's a little wider here at the bottom. Of course, in real life, I don't think you're gonna find somebody with this much of a big shape of the jaw, but our orc has that. Yeah, orcs generally have bigger lower face. And right now I'm masking the eyes and the nose area, and I have symmetry turned on as I'm doing this, and then invert it. Control I to invert, and then using the scale tool, I'm going to turn off my mirror. So yeah, if you want to scale a portion, just a portion of the face, it's a good idea to turn off mirror. Otherwise, if you have mirror turned on, you're gonna make a break on the face if you have mirror and then you're trying to use the scale tool on there. And yeah, after you mask things out, go to sculpt, set pivot to mask border, and then just scale that down. So yeah, this is, once again, this, you can't really find this in the real world, but it's still realistic because we started out with creating something more of the human proportion, and then right now we're just exaggerating. And unmask, and there you go. So we got something going on there, starting to look a little bit deviating from the average human face, but at the same time it still gives us that realistic feel. Turning on my mirror here and just lifting the nose up. So for orcs, generally you have a big spacing between the nose and the lips, so there's a huge space, a huge gap between the nose and the lip here, and you see that with almost every orc, okay, because they do have like a big teeth inside, and you need all that space between the nose and the mouth. And then using my clay strip brush here to just add a little bit more of the brow ridge. And yeah, the thing about orcs, they are very, very masculine. And you're gonna see that a lot of the orcs have really this big bulgy brow ridge. All right, really big bulgy brow ridge right there. And that's what I'm doing right now, using the clay strip brush, just bulking this up, and then using my grab brush, you're just gonna fix the chin here. Using my scrape brush to just kind of flatten this out. Yeah, right now you should be looking at a photo of your orc. So you could use Brahmish Hellscream, which is my main reference, or you could use another type of orc, whatever type of orc that you're looking at, but the same concept applies, you know, understanding the human skull, the human anatomy, and then applying that to creating your orc. Same concept, same fundamentals. And as you can see here, I like to use my clay strip brush to just add a little bit of skin-like shape here. And you can see there's like a little break here and there. I don't just like sculpt where it looks like there's a huge dip here. Yeah, I like to add little breaks around this area in almost every part of my skin, I like to add breaks to give more of the realistic feel. The skin like surfaced. And you could get that effect by using the clay strip brush. Just push in the clay, push out the clay. And yeah, right here, right now, I am using still my clay strip brush to push the clay in and then push the clay out. Push the clay out, add a little clay here. So we got a little bit of details here, like when an orc is looking mad, or even a person that looks mad, you kind of see the nose kind of flare up and you see a little bit of folds of the skin there on the nose area. And then right here, I am just thinking for the nose area, I am more thinking of the cartilage. So we got one. This is the shape of the nose, the shapes that you should be thinking of. You got 1, 2, and then you got 3, 4, and then you could have like a little bit of nice little break here. So that's the kind of shape that you should think about at the bottom of the nose area. And then the top, you should have more of this kind of shape here. And then, of course, I have added like a little bit of folds. And then from the bottom view right now, just thinking of the basic shape, pushing the clay in for the nasal opening. And pushing that down. So I am using the grab brush to just kind of sag this part of the nose down, because later on I will be adding a nose ring, and you have to think about the gravity and the weight of the jewelry. So if you are wearing a jewelry all day, every day, of course your nose is going to sag down, all right, because of all that weight that is intact on the nose. And yeah, this is what I'm thinking about as I'm sculpting. Thinking about the effect of the object on the character's nose. Yeah, and as you can see here, just using the clay strip brush, you just kind of add this nasal labial fold. So we got this nice shape right here. And then we have this shape that I was talking about before, right? And of course, then we got this chin area. And then onto the jaw. Just gonna flatten this out. I think it's a little too bulky. And you're never gonna stick with just one brush size, and you're never gonna stick to just one type of intensity. So you're gonna always be playing around with the intensity of the brush, with the size of the brush, and always constantly smoothing. You know, after you add using the clay strip, and then you just kind of sculpt, push in the clay or even push out the clay, you're gonna hold the shift key and then just smooth things out to just kind of blend everything together. As you can see, I'm smoothing that out. So it's all about adding the details, smoothing, and then going back to the details again, redefine the details, and then smoothing. But then again, don't think too much about the details, just thinking about the basic forms for now. And as you can see, just going to the top and the bottom view, making sure the eye is still kind of round, always constantly checking that area out. So you can see that he's starting to look a little bit more monstrous, not really something that you could find in real life. At the beginning, yeah, it's someone that your average male that you find in the street. But now you can't really find this dude walking in the street. If you see someone like this, that'll be interesting. Let me know. Put in a comment below. Oops, no. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and mask. Okay, I'm gonna mask the bottom part of the face here, the lips and the jaw area, bottom lips and the jaw, and then make sure the edges are smooth. So using this type of masking to get the edges to look smooth. So you want to do that when you're masking the face. You want to just really smooth out the edges, and you could also hold the shift key and just smooth out the edges that way, or just crank up your brush size. And then Control I to invert. That way you're not touching this, but you're only affecting this area out with the sculpting brushes. So you could really see how effective the using masking tool is. Alright, and then right here, I'm just gonna use my grab brush to just gonna pull this out. So our orcs definitely have the lower lips protruding out. So we gotta protrude this out because, you know, later on, this orc is gonna have those really, really big teeth. Alright, and to be able to hold that big teeth, the jaw here has to be quite large and protruded out. Alright, and by using the grab tool, we can get that effect. Using the grab tool, just pulling this out, and then going back and forth between the draw brush and the grab tool. You can see there I'm just protruding the chin. And then using my smoothing brush, just kind of smoothing the clay. So for areas like this that I want to bulk, I do like to use my draw brush instead of the clay brush. So just protrude that out. And then push that in. Once again, looking from the top, you should think about the round shape as you do this. And yeah, you could see that this is really, really stretched out right here, the mesh, because we have used the grab brush to just kind of really protrude out the lower lips. But this is going to be remeshed. We have to remesh that area. So Control R to just remesh that if you want to be able to sculpt on that part. And right now I'm using the draw sharp brush and the clay strip brush to just redefine this area of the side of the corner of the lips. And you see how nice this is. I have used my draw sharp brush to just kind of carve this in, and then using my clay strip brush to just add a little bit of clay on top right here. And then once you do that and you just kind of smooth things out, you will get a little nice effect there. If you smooth out the mesh and all the details that you add are going away, maybe you need to bring down the smoothing brush so some of the forms will still stay there. And once again, just remesh it. If you want to go back to the lip area that you have stretched out, you want to sculpt on it, make sure you remesh. Now I'm just going to go ahead and mask the upper lips here and the upper area of the face. That way I'm not touching that part. And then using the clay strip brush to just kind of push this in. That way I get a little depth around the mouth area. Push that in with the draw sharp, push that in. Because this is where the teeth is going to go inside. The tongue is going to be in here. We're going to be creating a hole here later after we retopologize our face and we got a cleaner mesh. But yeah, right now, all we need to do is just work on it like it's just like a clay that we're pushing in and out. That's it. Getting really rough with this. So this is not refined yet. Very, very basic. And then constantly remesh your stuff. So yeah, after you use the draw sharp and you really push this in, and you're going to see, you can see it, how stretchy it starts to look. This is when you really need to remesh your stuff. Control R to remesh. That way you're able to smooth and work with it, going back and forth between remeshing and then just pushing in the clay. So really pushing that clay in. Also right here. And then going, looking up and down the character, looking all views. Trying to bulk this up. So as you can see here, we got a little nice shape. We still got like the cheekbone going from the perspective. From the quarter view, you should see like a little nice curves on the face. All right, nice curves on the face. So you don't want it to look flat. All right, so you want to have lots of curves going on there when you're looking at the quarter view of the face. So I'm just going back to the shapes that I already have and just adding more to it, adding more forms to it. And then just nudging the forehead a little bit. It's a little too wide. And it's very important to also look from the far away view. So zoom out. And right here, I'm just masking out the part where I'm going to extruding out the ear, and Control I to invert that. So you have a little bit of everything here is masked except for this area right here. Okay, guess what we're going to do is we're going to be protruding this out for the ear area. So we got a little mesh to work with for the ears. So let's go to our move tool. Let's go to sculpt and pivot to mask border. So it goes to the border edge. And then let's just protrude that out. And then using the grab brush, just pull this out so we have more of like goblin ears. So yeah, they do have goblin ears, right? They work. So just make sure you look at a reference as you do this. So just really using the grab brush here to stretch out the clay. So yeah, from the back view, we should have more of the shape right here. And then from the front, we got this going. And of course, right now, we have to kind of use the grab brush. And you can see it's really stretched out. And it's really, really thin. We could kind of bulk this up. Bulk up the ears a little bit. You don't want it too thick though, because the ear is generally very thin. All right. It's thin that way because we want the SSS to show later when we have our SSS material. You want the ears are thin, and it's how it is in real life, because when the light hits it from the back, we can see a little bit of glow on the ears because it's really thin, and that's how it works in real life. So don't make the ears too thick, but just enough so that you're able to sculpt some details on there. And using the draw sharp to just kind of carve in a little bit of the structure, shape of the ears. And pushing this in for the whole of the ears. So what I'm thinking about right now as I'm doing this is I am thinking about this shape here. I'm thinking more of a Y shape. Inside the ears is more like a Y shape. And then we have this nice little hole right here. So the hole in the ears is kind of more like matching. It's kind of aligned with the cheekbone here around this area. Somewhat like that. And then using the draw sharp, you're just gonna push this in, carve this in. So here at the back, we have one. And then we have two shapes that we need to think about as we are doing the ears at the back. And then just adding a little break here at the head, so pushing the clay in a little bit. So just doing it real quick. You see the ears, we got a little something nice there already. And then using the clay strip brush, you just add a little clay there. Yeah, so it's really coming along, our orc. Just gotta nudge the ears, look in all views, see which part needs to pop out a little bit more. Right here is a little too thick, so I could definitely flatten this out. Using the scrape brush there to flatten it out. We want that part to be quite thin. So with the ears, really how it works is around this part of the ears is gonna be the thick area, and around this inside is gonna be more thin area, and even like this is carved in, it's a little thin. It's a little thin around here. So those areas that are the thin parts of the ears are gonna be glowing when you add like a backlight here. All right, but yeah, the thicker parts of the ear is not gonna glow as much with the illumination when you add a light later. So yeah, here, looking at the bottom of the ears here, we got this little gap right here. So we got the jaw and then up, and then we got this earlobe on there. Alright, so looking from afar, it's coming along. We could change the material here to matte cap. So we could go over here. Alright, so we could go to the material for the viewport shading here, and you could go to the matte cap here, and you could look at different types of materials here. I like to mess around with different materials just to see, I could see how it looks like with different type of lighting and different type of shadow. That way I could see which areas of the face that I need to work on, which areas I need to tweak, because different materials, different lighting will reveal different mistakes on the face or the body of your character. And so yeah, I like to just do this here, change my materials every now and then. I don't just stick to just using one material. And you will see me do more of that later on as I do the body and more of the details on the face. And right now, you just go into the shapes that I already have and kind of adding some more of the forms. All right, it's really coming along.